Here's why working at the office is never going to be the same again. As you guys have seen in my previous video, we talked about remote work and not really needing an office and stuff like that. But here's the thing, there are a lot of different options that you have as an employee or even as an employer in order to make this work for people who want to work remote, but maybe are willing to come into the office once a week, maybe once a month, depending on what your structure with them is. So let's talk a little bit about what that might look like. So that would be a hybrid workplace or a hybrid work situation where part of it's remote, part of it's not. So in this video, we'll talk about what a hybrid workplace is. And I'm also going to give you some tips on how you can negotiate a potentially hybrid position with remote days and also in office days. So let's go ahead and get started. Firstly, I would say one of the most important things that you need to do is understand what a hybrid setup is. So it doesn't necessarily change your role. Your role is exactly the same. Your job description is exactly the same. It does not affect any of that. The only thing that's different in a hybrid situation versus a fully remote situation is that you have to go into the office sometimes, right? So for some businesses, they have, let's say, an all hands meeting once a month. And so that means that you'd probably only have to go into the office once a month. Now, that's not a typical hybrid situation. A typical hybrid situation might be like 2 days at the office, 3 days at home. So the majority of your time is still spent at home. You're still working remote, or maybe you don't work from home. Maybe you work from a coffee shop, right? Wherever you're working from remotely, that's 3 days of your week. And then 2 days of the week, you're working from the office. A potential alternative to that is having 4 days remote and 1 day at the office. Although I don't see as many companies doing that. So it seems to be like the most common split is 3 days and 2 days. Whether it's 3 days at the office and 2 days at home, or 3 days at home and 2 days at the office. So that's kind of how that whole thing works. Now, the expectation from you does not change. And so one unique way that you'd be able to negotiate something like this is being super straightforward and focused with the work that you're delivering. So if you can minimize the amount of downtime that you have as an employee, whether you're working remotely or you're working from an office, that's going to make a real statement for you with your manager, with your boss and stuff like that. Because trust me, people would much rather have somebody working remotely who's a top performer than somebody who's kind of a mid performer or like not really doing so well and they also want to work remote. It's kind of like, why would we do that? We want you to improve your performance by working at the office. So basically, you need to start building your case, right? So if you are wanting to get a new job that is a hybrid situation, you have some ability to negotiate most of the time, like how many days you're working remotely, how often you're coming into the office. So first of all, you need to have a good reason. So let's say, for example, you have small children or whatever it might be that requires you to be home a certain amount of time throughout the day, right? And so if you have something like that, the first thing that's going to pop into your employer's mind is like, okay, well, if they have children, then they're not going to be working. They're going to be spending time with their children. That doesn't make sense for me to give them a remote position. So you need to already anticipate these thoughts that your potential employer might have. So if that's going to be the first thought, okay, well, actually, that's a great question. That's a great concern, but I've blocked off these specific times that I'm spending with my children, and that still allows me to have, let's say, 8 hours or 9 hours a day within these time frames, right? So every day, let's say I need to take the children to school at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., but by 9 a.m. I can be on my computer and I'm working straight through until 5. Or maybe you have a little break in between to go pick them up, and then you're working until 7. So if you can very clearly explain what hours you're working, what hours you're not working, I think that makes a huge difference, and that gives you a lot of credibility, and like people understand, okay, you have a life, you have to do these things, but these are the hours that you're working. And so obviously you still have to work those hours, but being super straightforward about that and being really clear and being able to articulate which hours you're going to be working and what your strategy is, I think goes a long way. Number 2, you need to build a business case for it. So you need to understand, okay, the employer's objective is not just to fill a seat, right? I'm not just here to take up space. I'm not just here because he wants another person or she wants another person on payroll. I'm here to do a specific job. Now, let's say they require 10 deliverables from me in a week. It might be small deliverables, so maybe you have 10 deliverables a week. So what if you found a way to create 11 or 12 deliverables a week? So all of a sudden that creates a ton of value for your position. If you can prove yourself, maybe you start out more in an office environment, maybe you're working remotely 1 day a week or 2 days a week, but you want to work remotely more. So if you can create a business case for why that's going to be better for you and better for the company at the same time, that's going to make the difference, because they need to understand, okay, when this person works remotely in that 1 day, they're able to deliver half of the deliverables that we expect them to do throughout the week, because when they're in the office, all this other stuff. So it's like, okay, well, maybe we can try out 3 days a week. So if in 3 days a week, you're delivering everything you need for the week, and now you have 2 days of free time, see, that makes a business case. It's like, okay, interesting. So maybe I should let this person work remotely more because they accomplish more at home. So it has to make sense. It can't just be like, oh, I want to work from home, or I want to work remotely, or I want to, only work at the office 1 day a week. It doesn't matter really what you want. Like, sure, you have your desires, you want those things, but to your employer, it's important that you can align your objectives to their objectives. I'm not saying they don't care about you, but I'm saying that they're running a business and they have certain business objectives. You are hired to help them accomplish these business objectives. If you can align your objectives with their objectives, all of a sudden, it becomes a lot easier to let you work remotely, or a hybrid situation, because I think that's where the future of the workplace is going. That's where the future of the office is going. Most people are going to be working remotely, and that's just a fact. And so I think that a hybrid situation is actually where most companies are going to settle. I would say that there's not really a necessity for people to go into the office, but I do see the value in it. So I think that for the most part, what's going to happen is a hybrid work situation where certain key individuals who need to be in the office are going to come into the office maybe a couple times a week, maybe a couple times a month, and do what they need to do physically in office. And then the rest of the time, they're going to be working remotely. But I think that a hybrid work setup can be really ideal for many people, especially people who have families, people who like to travel a little bit, because then that allows you to kind of strategically plan that travel and your work days at the office. So I think a hybrid option is ideal for many people. It gives you the flexibility that you want, as long as you can align your business objectives with the objectives of the employer, right? The company. Help them achieve their goals faster, and they're going to be a lot more willing to help you set up your work week in the way that you want to set it up, whether it's a hybrid option or a fully remote option. If you are delivering, that changes everything, and that allows you to request on your side whatever you might need in order to be more successful and in order to have the setup that you would like, whether it's working fully remote or working in a hybrid setup. Anyways, guys, that is how you get a hybrid work setup. When you're negotiating your position, your salary, I think it's an important conversation to have for anybody who's going into a new job. It's important to understand their stance on it, and then how you can potentially align your objectives with their objectives in order to get the work setup that you need. Anyways, guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.